Kami mengundang Bapak Ibu sekalian yang masih berada di luar ruangan untuk memasuki ruangan conference karena acara sebentar lagi akan kami mulai dan untuk menempati tempat duduk yang sudah tersedia. Dan kami juga meminta kepada Bapak Ibu sekalian yang terhormat yang hadir di ruangan ini untuk mengecek cellphone-nya, handphone-nya masing-masing apakah sudah ditaruh untuk mode silent agar supaya tidak mengganggu jalannya conference. Terima kasih banyak. Kami mengucapkan selamat datang kepada Bapak Ibu yang baru saja memasuki ruang conference. Kami persilahkan untuk menempati tempat duduk yang telah tersedia. Dan bagi para peserta yang masih berada di luar konferensi room, kami persilahkan untuk memasuki dan menempati tempat duduk karena sebentar lagi acara akan kami mulai. Good morning ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? We will start the International Conference on Land Acquisition, Global Trends on Compulsory Acquisition of Unregistered and Customary Land in a moment. We invite you to enter the conference room and please be seated. Thank you. Kami juga memohon kepada Bapak Ibu sekalian yang menggunakan telepon genggam untuk ditaruh di silent mode atau mode getar. Terima kasih. Kami mengucapkan selamat datang kepada hadirin yang baru hadir, Ibu Dirjen. Terima kasih atas kehadirannya. Kami persilahkan untuk menempati tempat yang telah tersedia. Bapak Ibu sekalian, acara akan kami mulai. Apabila masih berada di luar ruangan, kami harap untuk memasuki ruangan. Terima kasih. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi, Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati. We invite you all, the participants, to pay attention to the following briefs. We would like to invite the first brief by Ritz-Carlton Hotel to deliver the safety brief.
Baik, selamat pagi Bapak Ibu sekalian yang berbahagia. Selamat datang di The Ritz-Carlton Jakarta. Saya Munib dari Security Department akan menyampaikan beberapa informasi terkait masalah keamanan dan keselamatan selama Bapak Ibu sekalian berada di tempat kami di The Ritz-Carlton Jakarta. Bapak Ibu sekalian, saat ini kita masih berada di level 1 PPKM. Jadi mohon untuk selalu menggunakan masker, menutup untuk mulut dan hidung, dan juga bisa rajin menggunakan untuk hand sanitizer-nya. Bapak Ibu, saat ini kita berada di ballroom 3 dan 5. Tentunya di tempat kami tersedia fire protection system mulai dari sprinkler, smoke detector, dan juga tabung pemadam. Dalam keadaan darurat ada 3 pintu darurat. Baik, ini tadi yang saya sampaikan. So please put on your mask to cover your nose and mouth. Continue to the next slide. Kembali, pintu darurat tersedia di sebelah kanan Bapak Ibu sekalian, ada 2 di sisi kanan dan ada 1 di belakang. Dalam keadaan darurat, mohon ikuti arahan dari tim emergency yang akan nanti mengarahkan Bapak Ibu sekalian menuju ke assembly point yang terletak di forum entran atau tepatnya di samping pos pemeriksaan kendaraan pada saat Bapak Ibu sekalian memasuki The Ritz-Carlton Jakarta Mega Kuningan. Nanti sekali lagi akan ada petugas yang akan mengarahkan Bapak Ibu sekalian menuju assembly point. Hari ini kami tidak ada latihan evakuasi, tapi nanti apabila Bapak Ibu sekalian mendengar ada informasi untuk meninggalkan ruangan ini, ada pengumuman untuk meninggalkan ruangan ini, mohon jangan berjalan cepat, jangan berlari, silahkan berjalan cepat, ikuti arahan dari petugas hotel. Informasi berikutnya, area ini dilarang untuk merokok, bagi Bapak Ibu yang berkenan untuk merokok tersedia di Asia Restoran. Nanti tinggal turun di eskalator ke kiri, di sana tersedia untuk smoking area. Untuk restroom tersedia di belakang eskalator juga, Bapak keluar dari pintu ini ke kanan, nanti di sebelah kanan lagi itu tersedia untuk restroomnya. Berikut ini yang assembly point kami. Demikian keselamatan dan keamanan selama Bapak Ibu sekalian berada di tempat kami. Atas perhatiannya kami ucapkan terima kasih. Selamat pagi.
Terima kasih Bapak Munib untuk safety briefingnya. Thank you for the safety briefing instruction.
These are health-related protocols and measures for attending events or gatherings on ways to protect yourself and prevent the spread of COVID-19. All those involved in this event must be in a good health condition. You are not allowed to enter the venue and participate in activities. If you have a body temperature above the required or have symptoms such as fever, runny nose, sore throat, and/or shortness of breath, all attendees are required to wear a mask during the event. Wash your hands frequently with soap, hand sanitizer, or alcohol-based wipes. It is mandatory to always keep your distance from other people at least 1 meter and avoid direct physical contact. Practice coughing and sneezing etiquette by covering your nose and mouth with the band of your elbow or use a tissue. Dispose of used masks and tissues in a closed container before throwing them into the trash. Attendees are not permitted to switch or change or move the seats. Please obey the queuing rules and instructions when you enter and leave the venue, or when you are at registration area, at the food service point, at the toilet, at praying facility, at photo spots, at vehicle transit stops, or at any other facilities. Avoid touching the surface of an object in public facilities. Maximize digital technology for registration and interaction to avoid direct physical contact. Avoid having to use shared equipment or items. Use your own utensils, stationery, cutleries, praying kit, or your other personal supplies. Please adhere to the maximum capacity rules that have been set in each location, venue, room, and in any other provided facilities. If you suddenly get sick, please do not continue to participate in the activity. You can contact the organizer, Werkudara team, or committees for further assistance. Learn how to use microphones by following these safe practices and recommendations. Especially for speakers, we have provided dedicated microphones, and it is not allowed to be used interchangeably by fellow speakers, or at least the disinfection process has been carried out. For the use of microphones for participants which are used interchangeably, only use a microphone that has been disinfected and make sure to sanitize your hands with a hand sanitizer both before and after using the microphone. Microphones that are used interchangeably will always disinfect it first after each use. One microphone cannot be used simultaneously by 2 or more people. Let's stay productive by adapting to new, healthier, and cleaner habits so that you and others can always be protected.
Singing the national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Kindly be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, we would like to invite everyone to take a moment of silence to contemplate the reason we are here, why we participate in this conference, and pray for the success of this event. Also pray for those who recently went through terrible disasters and experiences losses during the Cianjur earthquake. May those who left us rest in peace.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Oh Allah, guide and bless our hearts and our minds with the light of your guidance. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities. Help us to speak our minds clearly. Help us to listen to each other, respect each other, love each other, so that we are included to the blessed person. Make this international conference as a useful science assembly, as a medium of sharing useful idea, knowledge, and experience. May the conference we organize today benefit to our lives, broaden our knowledge, shine our idea, and lead us to be successful, productive person, which in turn will boost dignity of our nation. Oh Allah, you are the one who can fulfill our dua. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Amin.
Selamat pagi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan dan salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Good morning ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the International Conference on Land Acquisition, Global Trends on Compulsory Acquisition of Unregistered and Customary Land, How to Avoid Costly Delay while Promoting Fairness for All. It is an honor for me, Claudia Lenke, to be the host for this event. Allow me to greet Minister of the Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning, Head of National Land Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Hadi Cahyanto, World Bank Operation Manager for Indonesia and Timor-Leste, Ms. Bolorma Amgabazar, Asia Director for International Valuation Standards Council, Mr. Nicholas Konialidis, Director General of Land Acquisition and Land Development of the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning, National Land Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, Ibu Embun Sari. Directorate General of Survey Land and Spatial Mapping, ATR BPN, Bapak Virgo Eresta. Director for Land Valuation and Lands Economy of the Directorate General of Land Acquisition and Land Development of the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning, National Land Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Herjon CM Panggabean. We like to extend our warm welcome to all the participants who present here in the room and also the participants who join us online. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, unregistered land rights are estimated to account for over 70% land rights in developing countries, including Indonesia. While the World Bank and other international financial institution policies require all recognizable rights holders to receive appropriate compensation, many projects face challenges in compensating the non-title holders due to complex regulatory, historical and cultural context, and also political economy issue. As more and more infrastructure needs to be built requiring land, including as part of the government's current agenda for the energy transition and the climate adaptation, we need to learn a better way to handle the land acquisition and compensation. This international conference seeks to share global experience in the valuation and compensation of unregistered and customary lands and explore ways to avoid costly delay in project implementation while ensuring fairness to all. This is a hybrid full-day conference hosted by the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning, National Land Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, and the World Bank. The interpreter service in English and Bahasa Indonesia is available for this event. Please click the interpretation feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to select your preference language. We also provide a sign language interpreter on the Zoom camera. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow to inform the agenda for today's conference. The first agenda is the opening remarks, and then we will continue to the first session where we will learn from the global experiences on valuation and compensation of unregistered and customary lands, including the use of emerging technologies and innovative social approaches. Then we will have a nice lunch break on the foyer outside the conference room. And then we will continue the second session with discussing with the experts on how to ensure fair and expedient compensation for land can be done to avoid impoverishment and displaced communities, including vulnerable groups. In the last session, we will have a presentation on how the new technologies can improve the valuation and compensation of unregistered and customary land. This international conference is also streamed live on YouTube at Kementerian ATR BPN and also facebook.com/Bank Dunia. Please take your seat and make yourself comfortable. For COVID-19 precautionary measure, we would like all the participants to keep your mask on during the conference. And please do not change seats. And also the hand sanitizer is available on your table. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the opening session. So without further ado, we would like to invite Asia Director, International Valuation Standards Council, Mr. Nicholas Konialidis, to deliver the opening remarks. Please welcome Mr. Konialidis.
Madam Director General, Madam Representative of the World Bank, directors from the delegation from Timor-Leste, dear directors from the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs in Indonesia, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is an honor for me to represent the International Valuation Standards Council, the IVSC, at this conference organized by the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and the World Bank. The IVSC is grateful to the organizers for this invitation. The IVSC is proud to participate in these considerable efforts to improve the process around the compulsory acquisition of unregistered and customary lands. Although this topic may seem marginal compared to the usual work of valuers, it is an important one for the IVSC and for the many volunteers who craft the standards. In fact, the IVSC, in its standards, address these issues. These standards explicitly state that, quote, in some instances, legitimate individual, communal, and/or collective rights over lands and buildings are held in an informal, traditional, undocumented, and unregistered manner. Furthermore, the standards recognize that, quote, a real property interest includes informal tenure rights for communal and/or collective tribal lands and informal urban or rural settlements or transition economies. This real property interest can take form of possession, occupation, and rights to use. End quote. These provisions have their natural place in the standards. In fact, they are perfectly aligned with the IVSC's core mission of serving the public interest. This is something we are very proud of. The IVSC serves the public interest in 3 ways, all of which are relevant to the topic of this conference. First, with over 180 members, we develop high-quality valuation standards. These standards ensure consistency, transparency, and comparability. Consistent, transparent, and comparable valuations are the baseline for compulsory acquisitions. Such valuations provide the starting point to include other important dimensions we'll be talking about in the process of the acquisition, such as the inclusion of non-market value and other rights. The second way we serve the public interest is to encourage the adoption of the international valuation standards by preparers, regulators, and users. Widespread adoption of the standards allows all stakeholders to speak the same language and to avoid misunderstandings in complicated matters. In Indonesia, for instance, we enjoy a very good relationship with MAPI, the Indonesian Society of Appraisers. With the opening of an office in Asia, we seek to continue developing our good relations with MAPI and other organizations. We, in fact, seek to replicate that relationship in other jurisdictions across the region. Beyond our relationship with professional organizations, the IVSC continues to have constructive dialogues with the regulators of many countries in Asia and in other regions, such as Africa and Latin America. The other way to promote consistency, transparency, and comparability is to encourage commercial and non-commercial users of valuations, such as the World Bank Group and other development financial institutions, to require that all valuations abide by the international valuation standards. Finally, the third way in which the IVSC serves the public interest is by advancing quality and professionalism amongst practitioners. The standards include important core principles of valuation, such as ethics, competency, and compliance. The IVSC published its Code of Ethical Principles, and these have been used since 2011. They were referenced in the Practice Manual for the Valuation of Unregistered Land, published by UN Habitat, RICS, the International Federation of Surveyors, and Global Land Tool Network. In the case of unregistered and customary lands, the lack of information and the ambiguity on the type of interest being valued increase the need to follow ethical principles of integrity, objectivity, and impartiality. These principles can be incorporated into local, national, and regional rules by the relevant regulators and authorities. In conclusion, I would reiterate a very simple message. First, the international valuation standards provide a useful conceptual framework for the acquisition of unregistered and customary lands. Second, as an organization, the IVSC looks forward to engaging with the numerous stakeholders involved in this process. Most importantly, promoting fairness in the compulsory acquisition of unregistered and customary lands is an important topic for the IVSC. It goes to the very heart of our mission to promote the public interest. I am very thankful for this opportunity to listen to the array of dedicated speakers and prestigious panelists the organizers have convened today. I also look forward to meeting all of you during the conference today during the break and lunch. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Cornelius, for your remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, following next is remarks from the World Bank Operation Manager for Indonesia and Timor-Leste. Please welcome Ms. Bolorma Amgabazar.
Sari, Director General of Land Acquisition and Land Development in ATR BPN, Pak Virgo Jaya, Director General in ATR BPN, distinguished delegation from Timor-Leste, bon dia, distinguished panelists, speakers of today's event, ladies and gentlemen, selamat pagi, selamat datang ke konferensi hari ini. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this international conference on land acquisition. I would like to start by congratulating the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and Land Agency for hosting this conference. The World Bank is very proud to support the ministry in its efforts to exchange knowledge and address challenges in acquiring unregistered and customary lands. Globally, governments continue to balance the social needs of different communities and the need for inclusive growth amidst environmental and economic challenges. Sustainable infrastructure development is one example of this balancing act. The energy transition, sustainable land use, climate adaptation require construction in areas where tenure rights might not be yet clearly established. Indonesia is no stranger to this challenge. Here, too, infrastructure development efforts are often hampered by delays due to the long process in acquiring unregistered and customary land. Identifying legal ownership and assessing the fair value of land is a significant and shared challenge. This challenge is deepened by overlapping claims, unclear boundaries, and the lack of documentation. So challenges are clear, and so is the shared goal, which is ensuring fairness for all parties involved in the acquisition of unregistered and customary land, like our title for today's conference. It is therefore no surprise that there is an increasing interest globally in the valuation of and compensation for such lands. This interest is reflected in the efforts of many parties joining the conference today, either physically in this room or by Zoom online, including FAO, UN Habitat, ADB, the International Valuation Standards Council, and the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. This international conference brings together experiences in innovations from different countries to explore where the practice can improve on the ground and where existing regulations may need to be strengthened. Today's panel of experts will discuss a variety of approaches. We will hear case studies from different countries and learn lessons to identify better ways to value unregistered and customary land, and also compensate stakeholders fairly. Some innovations on working with existing regulatory frameworks while responding to problems on the grounds will also be presented. I would like to emphasize that the World Bank stands ready to work closely with the government of Indonesia on ongoing and upcoming initiatives in the area of land acquisition, particularly to expedite much-needed climate-sensitive infrastructure. Thank you again for joining us, and I wish all of us a very good discussion today. Terima kasih banyak.
Thank you, Ms. Ambazar, for your remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite Ibu Embun Sari, Director General of Land Acquisition and Land Development of the Ministry of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning, to deliver the opening remarks and to officially open the International Conference on Land Acquisition. Please welcome Ibu Embun Sari.
Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang terhormat Mrs. Bolorma, Operation Manager for the World Bank in Indonesia and Timor Leste, Asia Director for International Valuation Standard Council. I'm so sorry as I use bahasa for this remark. Yang terhormat mungkin hadir di Zoom, Bapak Sekjen, Bapak Irjen, yang saya hormati Pak Virgo, Direktur Jenderal SPPR, Survei, Pengukuran dan Pemetaan Ruang. Yang saya hormati juga para staf ahli dan para pejabat tinggi media lainnya, yang juga mungkin hadir di Zoom meeting, para pembicara, dan panelis yang juga saya hormati. Bapak Ibu, mungkin hadir ini Kepala Badan Bank Tanah, kita sudah punya Bank Tanah juga, pejabat tinggi Pratama yang berkesempatan hadir pada pagi hari ini, para Kakanwil, kita mengundang seluruh kepala kantor wilayah BPN Provinsi se-Indonesia, mungkin yang di Jawa dan sekitarnya bisa berkesempatan hadir secara fisik, dan juga yang hadir ini keseluruhan kita undang yang mungkin hadir lewat daring. Kemudian perwakilan dari Kemenko Perekonomian, perwakilan dari Kementerian PPN Bappenas, Kementerian Keuangan, Kementerian Dalam Negeri, PUPR, KLHK, KSP, Elman, perwakilan dari Timor Leste, thank you, dari badan usaha, dari LSM yang berkesempatan hadir, serta semua yang hadir baik secara fisik maupun secara daring yang tidak dapat saya sebutkan satu persatu. Alhamdulillah wa syukurilah, kita panjatkan kehadiran Allah Subhanahu wa taala sehingga kita semua dapat melaksanakan dan hadir dalam acara International Conference on Valuation and Compensation of Unregistered and Customary Lands. Secara ya kita laksanakan secara hybrid ya pada hari ini. Sebelumnya saya ingin menyampaikan permohonan maaf dari Bapak Marsikal, Bapak Hadi Cahyanto, Bapak Menteri ATR dan BPN mendadak sekali diundang ke Istana Negara pagi ini. Selanjutnya ada penyerahan sertifikat yang dilanjutkan dengan penyerahan sertifikat yang tidak bisa diwakilkan tentu saja karena di Istana Negara. Sedianya beliau semangat sekali untuk memberi arahan dan membuka konferensi ini ya karena tugas yang tidak bisa ditinggal dan mewakilkan kepada saya untuk menyampaikan speech dari beliau dan juga membuka nantinya. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, saya mengucapkan atas nama Bapak Menteri selamat datang dan juga terima kasih atas keringanan langkah kehadiran Bapak Ibu dalam acara ini, dan juga acara ini terselenggara berkat kerjasama kami, kolaborasi yang baik antara ATR BPN dan World Bank. Thank you, Mrs. Bolorma. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang saya hormati, penyelenggaraan pengadaan tanah bagi pembangunan untuk kepentingan umum merupakan hal mendasar yang menentukan sukses tidaknya negara mewujudkan cita-cita masyarakat sejahtera, adil dan makmur. Di Indonesia itu ada Undang-Undang 2 tahun 2012 yang juga sudah diperbaharui dengan Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja, Undang-Undang 11 tahun 2020 untuk menjamin tersedianya tanah untuk pembangunan melalui proses pengadaan tanah. Dan pengadaan tanah ini harus mengedepankan prinsip kemanusiaan, demokratis dan adil. Demikian juga percepatan berbagai proyek strategis nasional yang telah dicanangkan oleh Bapak Presiden tidak akan dapat terlaksana dengan baik tanpa keberhasilan pengadaan tanah. Kalau tidak ada tanahnya, kita mau membangun di mana? Akan tetapi kendala pengadaan tanah akan berdampak pada upaya negara untuk mempercepat pemenuhan kebutuhan dasar dan peningkatan kesejahteraan masyarakat. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang saya hormati, ada UUPA Undang-Undang Nomor 5 Tahun 1960 tentang Peraturan Dasar Pokok-pokok Agraria yang secara tegas mengamanatkan pengakuan terhadap hak ulayat dan hak-hak sejenisnya dari masyarakat hukum adat. Memang ada garis kerasnya sepanjang menurut kenyataannya masih ada. Dan untuk itulah Kementerian ATR BPN menyambut baik berbagai usaha dan upaya penghormatan hak-hak ulayat dan masyarakat hukum adat tersebut. Conference hari ini mengambil tema Global Trends on Compulsory Acquisition on Unregistered and Customary Lands, How to Avoid a Costly Delay while Promoting Fairness to All. Tidak hanya sebagai bentuk upaya untuk memperkuat pengadaan tanah bagi pembangunan untuk kepentingan umum, tetapi lebih luas harus dimaknai sebagai upaya untuk memberikan penghormatan dan pengakuan terhadap masyarakat hukum adat di Indonesia. Para stakeholder termasuk para pegawai pemerintah dan para partner. Pembangunan diharapkan akan memperoleh pembelajaran dan pemahaman baru terkait penilaian dan kompensasi yang adil atas tanah yang belum terdaftar dan tanah adat atau tanah ulayat yang pada akhirnya pembangunan dapat berjalan lebih lancar dan konflik sosial dapat dihindari. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang saya hormati, sejalan dengan program percepatan pembangunan, pemerintah telah mengejar target seluruh bidang tanah terdaftar pada tahun 2025. Kementerian ATR BPN berperan mendaftar seluruh bidang tanah, tentu saja yang di luar area kawasan hutan, melalui program PTSL yang telah bergulir sejak 2017 dan ATR BPN mampu mengakselerasi pendaftaran tanah. Dari sebelumnya hanya maksimal 1 juta per tahun, sekarang dikerjakan oleh Pak Virgo 5 sampai dengan 10 juta bidang per tahun. Dan saat ini sudah terdaftar 81,5 juta bidang atau 65% sudah terdaftar dari total keseluruhan 126 juta bidang. Mudah-mudahan PTSL ini nantinya bisa mengatasi permasalahan sengketa, konflik, serta mafia tanah. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang saya hormati, saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada semua pihak yang terlibat dalam penyelenggaraan konferensi internasional ini. Selain kolaborasi kami dengan Bank Dunia, kami juga disupport oleh institusi internasional, International Valuation Standard Council, kemudian juga Asian Development Bank dan Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors dan UK Land Registry, juga dari Ordnance Survey UK dan juga di Institution of Surveyor of Uganda. Kalau dari Indonesia diwakili dari tenaga ahli menteri Bapak Nur Fauzi Rahman, tadi sudah hadir. Nanti akan memaparkan tentang kompleksitas pengakuan tanah ulayat dan tanah adat, kemudian atas pertimbangan bahwa penentuan besar nilai ganti kerugian dalam pengadaan tanah di Indonesia dilakukan oleh penilai publik, paparan tentang penilaian tanah belum terdaftar dan tanah adat ulayat akan disampaikan oleh Ketua MAPI, Bapak Muhammad Mutakin, dan dalam diskusi panel dari Indonesia akan diwakili oleh Prof. Dr. Insinyur Nur Azam Ahsani dari IPB, tadi sudah ketemu dengan saya. Oh ya. Terima kasih Prof sudah hadir. Dan praktisi penilai publik Ibu Rengganis Kartono, terima kasih Ibu. Serta itu dari MAPI ya Ibu ya. Kemudian ada nanti rangkaian presentasi, diskusi panel dan demonstrasi pada conference ini diharapkan dapat menghasilkan pembelajaran dan pemahaman baru yang dapat membantu menjawab tantangan penilaian ganti kerugian dalam pengadaan tanah bagi pembangunan untuk kepentingan umum di Indonesia. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang saya hormati, Kementerian ATR BPN adalah pengemban amanat negara sebagai pelaksana pengadaan tanah bagi pembangunan untuk kepentingan umum dituntut harus mampu bekerja lebih transparan, lebih cepat, efektif, dan efisien. Penilai publik sebagai mitra independen dalam pengadaan tanah juga harus mampu bekerja lebih profesional. Kerjasama yang baik antara ATR BPN dan penilai publik diharapkan mampu mewujudkan pengadaan tanah yang menjunjung nilai-nilai kemanusiaan dan keadilan. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang saya hormati, akhir kata, sekali lagi izinkan kami mengucapkan terima kasih yang sebesar-besarnya. Dan juga tak lupa kami mohon maaf tentu saja jika ada hal-hal yang dianggap masih kurang dalam pelaksanaan acara ini. Apresiasi kami berikan kepada semua presenter dan panelis yang bersedia berbagi pengalaman dan keilmuannya pada konferensi ini. Untuk Bank Dunia sekali lagi kami mengucapkan terima kasih tak terhingga atas kerjasama kita dan semoga kerjasama yang baik ini dapat berlanjut di kegiatan-kegiatan lain yang bermanfaat bagi kemajuan bersama. Bapak Ibu, jadi mewakili Bapak Menteri ATR Kepala BPN dengan memohon ridho Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala seraya mengucapkan Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. International Conference on Valuation and Compensation of Unregistered and Customary Lands pada hari ini Kamis 1 Desember 2022 dibuka. Sekian, billahi taufik wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
We invite Ibu Embun untuk tetap ada di atas. And we also would like to invite Miss Bolorma Amgabazar to join us on stage, and also Bapak Herjon CM Panggabean. Kami persilahkan for the opening ceremony of today's conference. Ya, Ibu Embun, kindly put your hand on the button, and on the count of 3, we press the button. Ladies and gentlemen, to officially open the conference, 1, 2, 3. The International Conference on Land Acquisition Global Trends on Compulsory Acquisition of Unregistered and Customary Land is officially open. Once again, let's give a big round of applause for the success of the conference. We would also like to invite for the photo session come to the stage once again, Mr. Nicholas Cornelius, Mr. Satoshi Ishihara, delegation from the Ministry of Justice Timor-Leste, Zendoveva Xavier Correa, Horacio da Silva and Afonso da Costa Bello, and also Bapak Virgo Ernesta, Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, once again. From the ATR BPN photographer. Okay, please stay on the stage. We need to have a... Oke, kami persilahkan. Oke, Ibu Embun untuk di tengah. Oke, baik. Oke, baik. Oke, maybe another pose, ladies and gentlemen, ya? Ya. Oke, a little bit closer. Oke. Thank you very much. You may return to your seat, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Once again, give a big applause for the conference today. Thank you. Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we're about to move on to our first session of discussion. But before that, we are going to have a short break, coffee break. But before we enjoy the refreshment, the coffee break, allow me to inform you about the Q&A session. We are going to have the Q&A session after the discussion. And for online and offline participants, please write down any of your question through Slido. You can open the website slido.com, SLEDO.com. And then enter the event code. The event code is LV2022, LV2022. And then input your name before writing your question. We are going to have a Q&A session after the discussion. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your short break. The refreshment is served outside the foyer area, and we'll be back with our next program in 15 minutes. Dalam waktu 15 menit kita akan langsung memulai sesi diskusi yang pertama. Kami persilahkan Bapak Ibu untuk menikmati coffee break yang telah tersedia di luar. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu sekalian, our next program is about to begin. We invite you to enter the conference rooms once again. Bapak Ibu sekalian, acara akan kami mulai sebentar lagi untuk diskusi yang pertama mengenai case studies. Kami undang untuk memasuki ruangan konferensi dan duduk di tempat yang telah diduduki tadi. Terima kasih. Ibu bapak sekalian yang masih berada di area foyer, kami persilahkan untuk mengambil coffee break, refreshment dan dibawa ke mejanya masing-masing karena acara akan kami mulai untuk case study discussion. We invite all the participants to enter the conference room because we are going to Kami kembali mengundang, mempersilahkan Bapak Ibu sekalian yang masih ada di luar untuk memasuki ruangan karena dalam 2 menit lagi kita akan memulai acara berikutnya. Kami persilahkan apabila masih belum selesai untuk menikmati sajian kopi, teh dan makanan, boleh dibawa yang belum selesai ke dalam ruangan agar supaya acara bisa kami teruskan sesuai dengan jadwal. Terima kasih. Welcome back Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a good refreshment and we are about to continue our program for today's conference. Should we inform you about this meeting rules? A Q&A session. We are going to have a Q&A session after the discussion. For online and offline participants, please write down your question through Slido from the website slido.com. And do not forget to enter the event code. It's LV2022. I mean LV2022. And then input your name before writing your question. Ladies and gentlemen, the interpreter service in English and Bahasa Indonesia is available for this event. Kindly click the interpretation feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to select your preference language. We also provide a sign language interpreter on the Zoom screen. As we mentioned before, we are going to have the case studies discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know, acquisition of unregistered and customary lands remains to be a complex problem, which has implication to project implementation and might result in adverse impacts to the communities. For the next session, some interesting case studies will be presented. The discussion will focus on specific valuation methodologies applied respectively that help manage challenges in the valuation and compensation of unregistered and customary land. For this session, this case studies discussion, we have 6 speakers from Indonesia. Nur Fauzi Rahman, PhD, expert resource for the Minister of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning, National Land Agency of the Republic of Indonesia on participation and communities empowerment. And then still from Indonesia, we have Muhammad Mutakin, National Chairperson for the Indonesia Society of Appraisers, or MAPI. From Uganda, Nyonyintono Cyrus, Registered Surveyor, the Institution of Surveyors of Uganda, ISU. From Nepal, we have Aaron Dennis, Social Development Safeguard Specialist, Asian Development Bank. And also from Nepal, we have Laxmi Prasad Subaidi, Social Development Safeguard Specialist, Asian Development Bank. And from Sri Lanka, we have Razak Muhammad Khan, Senior Social Development Specialist, World Bank. And for this discussion, will be led by our moderator, Ms. Prita Laura, Currently, Ms. Prita Laura serves as special staff of the Executive Office of the President of the Republic of Indonesia. So without further ado, I will hand the stage to our moderator, Ms. Prita Laura.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Sebuah kehormatan untuk saya bisa moderatori acara kita pada hari ini. I'm delighted to moderate today's panel to discuss this important question on how to expedite the acquisition of unregistered and customary lands while ensuring fairness to all. To do this, we will hear 5 case studies from our different countries, from 4 different countries, in doing acquisition of unregistered and customary land. And I would like to invite the speakers that some of them will join us through online. First, I would like to welcome Mr. Nur Fauzi Rahman, PhD, Expert Resource for the Minister of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning, National Land Agency of the Republic of Indonesia on participation on community empowerment. Please welcome Mr. Nur Fauzi Rahman. And for the next speaker, I would like to invite Mr. Muhammad Mutakin, National Chairperson for the Indonesian Society of Appraisers, MAPI. Please welcome Mr. Muhammad Mutakin. That I would like to invite Ms. That will join us through online. And from Nepal, we will hear from Mr. Aaron Dennis, Social Development or Safeguard Specialist, Asian Development Bank. And we'll join also from Nepal, Laxmi Prasad Subaidi, Social Development or Safeguard Specialist, Asian Development Bank. Please welcome. And last but not least, we will hear lesson learned from Sri Lanka, Mr. Razak M. Ghani, Senior Social Development Specialist of World Bank. Please welcome. All right, for the first presenter, each of the presenters have 15 minutes to present. And for the first presenter, I would like to welcome Mr. Nur Fauzi Rahman. First, I would like to read about his bio, short bio for a while. Mr. Nur Fauzi Rahman is an expert resource for the Minister of Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning. He has more than 3 decades of experience working on customary and unregistered land within and outside forest areas, which add another layer of complexity in Indonesia legal context. He is active board and member of non-governmental organization which cover agrarian, forestry, poverty, community empowerment. Hello? Yeah. He is an active lecturer on environmental and community psychology at the University of Jajaran Bandung, and he had been advising the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, the President's Staff Office, and local government in various process and implementation of agrarian reform and social forestry policy, particularly in regards to mapping and registration of customary land and communities' involvement in the process of valuation and land acquisition for development programs. And he completed his PhD on Indonesian land reform policy and agrarian movement at the University of California, Berkeley. Please welcome Mr. Nur Fauzi Rahman for your presentation. You have 15 minutes to present. Please welcome.
Thank you, Prita. I have a very limited time for the huge topic, so allow me to do some brief and also allow me to open my masker simply because to help you to hear better my articulations. Let me check the presentations. Can I get my presentations PPT, please? Is it already show? Not yet? Might the committee help me to show my presentations?
Okay, yeah. It will be in a minute.
In a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. So the purpose of my presentations first is to elucidate two types of relevant contexts. First, individual privatizations of the customary land. The second, what I termed statizations of the customary land. So, my second purpose of my presentation is to explicate, I use the term, ontological differences between modern conception of private property rights and customary property rights. And the last one, I will give some recommendation and further reference on how we can learn more about this issue. Next, please. I hope you are familiar with the huge presentations on how many land that already registered in non-forest area. Look at that, the statistics. Thanks for Jatmiko to give me these pictures. I don't want to go in detail, but the problems of this, where is the customary land in this picture? Of course, there are unregistered land that governments, national agencies, and other helping stakeholders, organizations, help to make it possible to achieve at the 100%. But in what they imagine as 100%, where is the customary land? Okay, I will show you the blind spot of this land registration. Next, please. We know the land that are registered partly come from customary land. This is what I call individual privatization of customary land. They come from partly from the customary lands attached to the hak ulayat, or from jointly owned lands from one descendants that cultivated with use right by the community members or outsiders. So these individualizations brings about two changes at once. Namely, first, the nature of ownership from communal to individuals. And the second, the different regulatory regimes that are enforced, where customary law is replaced by formal land laws. Next, please. I have a friend named Ricardo Simarmata. He got a PhD from Leiden. He made a very good articles, and he mentioned about the two consequences if part of the customary land are registered by the government's programs, so-called PTSL, ya, pendaftaran tanah sistematik lengkap. The traditional share, the customary land that have been certified as private property have moved to the jurisdiction of state law, and therefore no longer within the reach of customary authority. So, the problem with the PP 2497 on land registrations is the blind spot. If we trace back how and where this peraturan pemerintah come from, it's come from government of Indonesia with some help of the World Banks and AusAid through the Indonesian Land Administration Project, 1995-1999. So if you read the World Bank's staff appraisal report on this project, you will find that their purpose is to establish more effective land market in order to improve efficiencies and achieve highest best value of land, rely more on market forces. So for the first time, the new modality were established, which is land market for land registration. This is different with government regulation in 1991, number 2 on land registrations. So it is important for me to mention that because at that regulations, yeah, customary lands attached to Haulayat, the customary property right authorities, are not mentioned as the object or target of land registrations. And it's still active. Yeah, that peraturan pemerintah, even the government programs and design for land registration change over time, including the recent one is PTSL. Well, that's the first context. The second context, next please, what I call as state is the state. Statization is the term that I made of customary land. What does it mean? Customary land attached to Haulayat are wrongly defined as state land. This is not only for the forest zone. Every land under the forest zone is state-owned land. Until 2012, when the Constitutional Court made a ruling, yeah, to change the particular article in forestry law number 4199 that clearly, yeah, revised the customary forest is not owned by the state, but is owned by the customary masyarakat adat. Okay, that very huge differences. Because of the categorizations, so every customary territories and lands and resources under the state zone must be moved into the different categories. But the problem is the consequences when the statizations have been taken place. For the non-forest area, this is our issue here, yeah? The actually existing customary land then turned into state land. Of course, without any consent of the indigenous communities, masyarakat adat. Conflicted claims are protected when government entities or corporate entities get new rights over the customary lands. Then, moreover, of course, the corporation or the government entities started to expropriate and alienate the lands from the control of the indigenous or masyarakat adat, including by force. So that's the big issue. We have been facing many protests from the indigenous groups. Next, please. One of them, look at this, how a group of indigenous women do the bare-chested actions. Open their clothes and show their body without any clothes. And this is the repertoire of actions that usually used by mama and across ethnic groups. My friends, Indira Simbolo, now she has been a position in the indigenous expert in ADB in Manila, made a dissertation on this, how a group of women of the Bataks made a protest to the land acquisitions for the corporation for PT Inti Indorayon at the time that controlled more than 700,000 hectares of the forest area. So this is still, we harvest the crisis of legitimacy because of that statisticians over customary land that they already inherited years from their ancestors. So for the government project with the purpose for the public interest, usually we use so-called eminent domain. Eminent domain is the special, particular, only under special conditions that the state authorities, including National Land Agency, could use it to alienate the land, to take over the land from the peoples. There are conditions here. It can be implemented only because of the due processes, because of the consent of the people, or we can use the court in order to make it implemented, enforced. But we, because of the particular conditions, harvest the protest. So next, please. So I have been researching this one. It's 30 years, and I made a framework how to understand the land conflict that are chronic, structural, and expanded into multiple different articulations. The quotation I made in the right side is come from Professor Ida Lunida from Universitas Pajajaran. He's the legal professor. You can read it. I don't want to read, but if we want to protect masyarakat adat, more or less, seriously, we have definitely do settling the disputes or conflict. Without handling that one, the rhetoric of the recognitions of the customary rights or hak-hak masyarakat hukum adat is merely rhetoric. Next, please. I don't want to do more explanation about this issue is historic. We know every legal scholar working on agrarian issues or hukum adat or the customary law is always familiar with Cornelis van Vollenhoven. The legal scholar labeled him as Bapak Hukum Adat. Okay, and they made a pleidoy, because the professor made a pledoi, he made a book. Ya, Orang Indonesia dan Tanahnya. We translate it, we publish it, the book. You can download it freely in the Sekolah Tinggi Pertanahan Nasional. So the issue still on. Professor Mario Soemarjono is one of the senior advisors of the Minister of the Agrarian Affairs and Spatial Planning. Criticized the articles, special articles in the Undang-Undang Hak Cipta, ya, Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja, sorry, ya. There's option in Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja mentions that for the customary land, tanah-tanah yang dilekati hak ulayat, ya, the customary land attached by the hak ulayat may be given by national agency through hak pengelolaan. HPL, hak pengelolaan, is a term, a new term. It's not been mentioned in the Basic Agrarian Law 1990. No, it's just a new invention. And the assumption of the HPL is a state land. So the Mario Soemarjono criticized this one because this is contradictory with the nature, the very nature of the customary land, which is their embedded ownership. It's not something because you didn't know it, then you can give the particular land legal scheme, yeah, based on assumption that the land is state-owned land. Next, please. So the conclusion that I want to make in this forum is market value and market-based valuations, which is most common, yeah, for MAPI's appraisers, yeah, is not compatible with the very nature of the customary land attached to hak ulayat. Yeah? The notion of the property is fundamentally different between modern private property right and customary property right. Private property rights are generally within the framework of being interchangeable. You can sell it. You can buy it. While customary property rights are inherited from ancestors to be inherited to next generations and therefore cannot be separated from indigenous communities. It is inalienable and of course are not be sold. The lands are necessary spaces for the continuation of communities and other species, don't forget that one, other species life, since past, present, and future. This is very important. Yeah, UNDP made a development report that very important in the context of our Anthropocene era. This is a new term that I mentioned, yeah, where the whole Earth is under threat now because of the activities of the capital and human. So we need to restore the Earth by creating a secure tenure for the indigenous or masyarakat adat controlled land, territory, and resources. So we have to go beyond the land market and market-based valuations in order to allow customary land attached to hak ulayat exist and continue to be exist. For Indonesia and many other countries, this is a very important because this is the character, the very element of the Indonesian character, which is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Okay? Last one. Next, please. I use the term ontological differences. This is difference. We are in COVID era. What is coronavirus disease come from? It is from the virus. Virus is a different creature than bacteria. Virus is not living entities. If you understand the virus by your perspective on bacteria, you will mislead, you will mistreat. Definitely because the two creatures have a different ontological existence. Okay? So this should lead to methodological challenge for MAPI. How we have to deal with the customary territory attached to Hal Wayat. No, it's different. If you make it private individualizations to the customary land, wow. Especially when you use eminent domain, you will dismantle not only the land that final reflections, please, the last slide. So how far we can go to beyond the market value? Compensations, it should be educational. Compensation, individual compensation should be replaced. Maybe we have to think more about how we can go to the, how you call it, that one. If you have a money, yeah, if you still monetize this one, don't give money to individual members of those who are land taken from the customary land, but give them, I forgot the term, the money that you give into something that you can get, partially you can have taken from that, but you can leave them in order to allow you get the interest from them to give to the members of the indigenous or masyarakat adat. How you call it that?
I don't know, kelompok masyarakat adat begitu atau?
No, if someone donate their money,
Yeah.
Put it in the
Something like trust, you mean?
trust, yeah, money as a trust, and then every members of the masyarakat adat can get as a fellowship, can get that money, part of that money, interest of that money, in order to help the landscape is better. Yeah. If I find that term better, I will give you later. Yes. Thank you very much, Prita.
Okay, thank you. Let's give a big applause to Mr. Nur Fauzi Rahman. Thank you for your passionate and insightful presentation. Yeah, we get another perspective, yeah, from the academia of Indonesia who have many experience on unregistered and customary land in Indonesia. And next we will have a presentation from Mr. Muhammad Mutakin, from National Chairperson for the Indonesian Society of Appraiser, MAPI. Let me read his short bio first. Mr. Muhammad Mutakin is the chairperson of the Indonesia Society of Appraisal, an association of licensed valuator in Indonesia, and established property consultant. He had extensive experience in land valuation for compensation in regard to land acquisition, both in practice at project level, in the academic sphere as lecturer, and for valuation policy or instrument development for over 20 years. He is managing partner of the Public Appraiser Office or Indonesia, we call it KGPP, Mutakin Bambang Purwanto Rozak and Rekan. And he was a member of the Governing Council of National Committee ASEAN Valuers Association for Indonesia Chapter. Muhammad Mutakin obtained his master degree in property management and valuation from the University Technology of Malaysia. Please welcome Mr. Muhammad Mutakin. 15 minutes for your presentation. Yeah, you may stand up.
Mohon izin berdiri. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera dan sehat untuk kita semua. Mungkin PowerPoint saya dapat dibantu. Nah, baik. Terima kasih. Saya akan mencoba membawakan mengenai penilaian untuk tanah yang belum terdaftar dan tanah adat untuk kepentingan pengadaan lahan untuk pembangunan kepentingan umum. Jadi kalau sebenarnya ada 4 topik yang akan saya bahas, tetapi di topik pertama mungkin terkait dengan masalah tanah adat. Tidak perlu saya ulang karena Pak Nur sudah cukup detail. Yang tadi salah satu disampaikan tantangan bagi penilai untuk tanah adat itu jangan dihitung secara uang saja, gitu kan. Nah, baik, saya akan coba masuk. Jadi mohon lanjut. Jadi yang poin 1 saya coba loncati, saya langsung ke yang poin 2, proses pengadaan tanah di Indonesia. Lanjut. Nah, pengadaan tanah di Indonesia itu dasar hukumnya adalah yang pertama tentu saja Undang-Undang Dasar 45, yang tentu saja tujuannya adalah untuk tujuan kesejahteraan, keadilan bagi seluruh rakyat Indonesia. Nah, ini yang tidak boleh kita lupakan nanti di dalam kita melakukan penilaian untuk pengadaan tanah. Kemudian yang kedua, Undang-Undang Pokok Agraria. Kita harus memperhatikan itu karena belum ada undang-undang yang terkait dengan pertanahan yang mengatur selain Undang-Undang Pokok Agraria. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah, nah ini khusus untuk pengadaan tanah. Nah, Undang-Undang Nomor 2 Tahun 2012 yang kemudian juga sudah disempurnakan melalui Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja Nomor 11 Tahun 2020. Kemudian pelaksanaannya untuk Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja sudah ada Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 19 Tahun 2021. Kemudian implementasinya juga ada Peraturan Menteri ATR BPN, kebetulan juga Nomor 19 Tahun 2021. Nah, kemudian ada juga satu peraturan yang ini terkait nanti bagaimana dampak sosial ekonomi terhadap masyarakat yang terdampak pengadaan tanah, terutama terkait dengan tanah-tanah yang tidak terregister atau tanah penduduk yang belum mempunyai surat. Nah, yang terakhir tentu saja adalah Peraturan ATR BPN Nomor 17 Tahun 2022. Ini yang terbaru yang mengatur mengenai penilai pertanahan. Lanjut. Nah, kalau kita bicara pengadaan tanah ada 4 tahapan, yaitu pertama perencanaan, persiapan, pelaksanaan dan penyerahan hasil. Nah, ini menjadi sangat penting di awal itu adalah di dalam perencanaan kita harus melakukan suatu studi. Jadi calon yang membutuhkan tanah harus melakukan studi yang terkait dengan sosial ekonomi, terkait dengan dampak, terkait dengan keperluan pengadaan tanah yang disusun di dalam DPPT. Kemudian di persiapan itu penetapan lokasi dilakukan oleh gubernur atau bupati yang tentu saja didasarkan pada hasil perencanaan yang dilakukan pada tahap 1 tadi. Nah, pada tahap persiapan ini yang menjadi sangat penting adalah harus adanya sosialisasi ataupun kepada stakeholder untuk menyampaikan pengumuman, menyampaikan apakah ada pihak-pihak yang berkeberatan dengan rencana pengadaan tanah tersebut. Nah, ini menjadi sangat penting karena jangan sampai nanti pada saat kita melakukan pengadaan tanah ada penolakan dari masyarakat yang mungkin di dalam pelaksanaan nanti akan mengganggu. Nah, yang ketiga, yang kedua tadi juga konsultasi publik itu menjadi penting. Nah, itu untuk yang persiapan, kemudian untuk pelaksanaan yang tentu saja pertama adalah bahwa BPN itu akan membentuk Satgas A, Satgas B untuk melakukan pendataan terhadap tanah, terhadap siapa pemegang haknya, objek apa yang ada di atas tanah, objek apa yang nanti akan mendapat penggantian. Termasuk juga terkait dengan masalah tanah adat ataupun tanah yang belum terdaftar itu menjadi sangat penting menentukan siapa penghuni, siapa yang memanfaatkan tanah tersebut. Nah, kemudian yang berikutnya adalah dilakukan penilaian berdasar data nominatif tadi. Kemudian dari hasil penilaian tadi dilakukan musyawarah untuk menyepakati bentuk penggantian yang akan diberikan, apakah berupa uang atau penggantian tempat lain dan lain sebagainya. Nah, kemudian setelah disetujui tentu saja akan dilakukan pembayaran kepada pihak-pihak yang berhak. Nah, kemudian setelah itu nanti akan ada pelepasan hak oleh si pemegang hak kepada pihak yang memerlukan tanah. Nah, yang paling penting yang kita lakukan adalah bahwa seluruh proses-proses tadi harus dicatatkan di dalam berita acara untuk pendokumentasian. Nah, ini adalah untuk menjaga risiko-risiko yang akan terjadi apabila di dalam perjalanannya ada pihak-pihak yang tidak setuju atau dari pihak lain yang kira-kira nanti akan dapat menghambat pengadaan tanah tersebut. Yang tentu saja terakhir adalah bahwa setelah sertifikat tanah diterbitkan nanti oleh pihak BPN akan menyerahkannya kepada pihak yang memerlukan tanah. Nah, inilah rangkaian kegiatan di dalam melakukan penilaian untuk pengadaan tanah. Yang sangat penting tadi adalah bahwa dokumentasi pengadministrasian menjadi sangat penting. Kadang kita lupa, dokumentasi tidak kita perlukan, tidak kita lakukan, akhirnya dapat menjadi masalah di kemudian hari. Lanjut. Nah, khusus untuk penilaian pengadaan tanah ini, kami KPS MAPI telah memiliki standar penilaian Indonesia 204. Yang terbaru adalah tahun 2012. Sebelumnya, 2022, yang sebelumnya adalah SPI 306 2013. Nah, ini karena ada penyusunan peraturan, maka KPSPI melakukan penyusunan menjadi SPI 204. Banyak hal-hal yang diubah, kita menyesuaikan dengan peraturan perundangan yang berlaku. Nah, biaya penggantian baru adalah didasarkan pada si pemilik tanah, nilai bagi si pemilik tanah, yaitu dapat disetarakan dengan nilai pasar. Kalau Pak Nur tadi ada challenge bahwa apakah dapat disetarakan dengan nilai pasar. Nah, di dalam penggantian itu adalah nilai pasar plus-plus. Ada kerugian ekonomis, kerugian sosial dan lain-lain yang dapat diperhitungkan. Nah, kemudian kalau kita bicara di SPI, nilai penggantian wajar itu dapat dipersamakan dengan penggantian kerugian pada Undang-Undang Nomor 2 Tahun 2012. Lanjut. Nah, komponen nilai penggantian wajar terdiri dari nilai fisik, yaitu tanahnya itu sendiri, dan nilai non fisik yang terdiri dari satu premium terdiri dari kehilangan pekerjaan atau profesi. Kalau untuk rumah tinggal ada solasium atau emotional loss. Jadi kalau kita tinggal di satu rumah sudah berpuluh-puluh tahun pasti akan ada rasa emosional kehilangan rumah tersebut. Kemudian atau ada premium lain yang dapat diidentifikasi. Kemudian yang kedua adalah biaya transaksi, biaya pindah, pajak, dan lain-lain. Nah inilah yang sering kadang saat ini penilai sering menghadapi APH di dalam melakukan penilaian, bahwa ada biaya-biaya yang dianggap bahwa itu salah, tidak memenuhi. Padahal tujuannya adalah agar orang yang dibebaskan itu kehidupannya akan lebih baik. Jangan sampai nanti mereka malah tidak dapat menemukan tanah pengganti. Kemudian ada masa tunggu, itu adalah bahwa di dalam penilaian antara penetapan lokasi dengan pembayaran ganti rugi kadang tidak sekaligus. Nah, sehingga ada waktu jeda untuk menunggu atas pembayaran. Nah, itu juga harus diperhitungkan. Nah, kemudian ada tanah sisa. Kalau misalnya ada tanah yang harus dibebaskan itu harus diperhitungkan juga. Kemudian kerugian fisik lainnya akibat adanya kerusakan akibat kegiatan pengadaan lahan. Lanjut. Nah, ini yang menjadi sangat penting kalau kita melakukan penilaian pengadaan tanah untuk tanah adat. Nah, di dalam SPI itu menyatakan SPI 204 bahwa di dalam melakukan penilaian tanah adat di tahap awal perencanaan itu harus melibatkan tenaga ahli. Sehingga nanti akan tahu kira-kira apa yang harus diganti. Kalau Pak Nur tadi kan tidak dapat diukur dengan uang saja. Nilai sosial itu apa yang harus diganti. Nah, sehingga nanti sebenarnya kalau untuk tanah adat ini bisa saja diganti dengan uang atau mungkin penggantian tempat lain. Nah, itu yang mungkin equal dengan apa yang menjadi manfaat bagi masyarakat adat. Nah, sehingga di dalam melakukan penilaian, penilai harus mengikuti pendapat ahli tersebut. Karena belum ada peraturan yang mengatur, terutama untuk tanah adat itu masih berbeda-beda. Masing-masing daerah mempunyai aturan yang berbeda. Sehingga tidak dapat kita standarkan. Di daerah ini yang harus diganti apa, di daerah ini apa. Nah, itu akan berbeda-beda. Lanjut. Nah, ini saya akan coba menyampaikan 2 studi kasus. Yang pertama adalah tanah hutan di proyek Bendung Lau Simeme di Sumatera Utara. Bahwa ini proyek ini berdiri di atas tanah hutan tanaman produksi tetap, sehingga di dalam penilaiannya itu tanah tercatat sebagai punyanya Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan. Masyarakat menempati atau mengelola tanah tersebut sehingga tanah tidak dilakukan penggantian, tetapi bangunan atau tanaman yang ada di atasnya yang diganti. Tetapi problemnya masyarakat tetap mengklaim bahwa tanahnya minta diganti, padahal dia tidak mempunyai surat yang menunjukkan bahwa dia menguasai tanah tersebut, hanya dia menggarap. Lanjut. Nah, yang kita nilai adalah bangunan, tanaman atau objek yang terkait dengan tanah di atasnya. Gitu. Nah, kemudian yang non fisik itu tentu saja diserahkan kepada masyarakat penggarap. Nah, kalau untuk tanahnya itu tentu saja ada proses pelepasan dari KLKH kepada pihak PUPR yang membutuhkan tanah tersebut. Lanjut. Kemudian lanjut saja untuk saya masuk aja ke yang case kedua, yaitu penilaian tanah untuk pengadaan Bandara Yogyakarta. Nah ini proyek tahun 2016, mungkin cukup ramai dan mungkin ini salah satu proyek yang sukses dilakukan oleh BPN. Tepuk tangan untuk BPN atas prestasi pengadaan untuk Jogja. Nah ini yang berdiri di atas tanah 500 atau hampir 600 hektar. Tetapi ada kira-kira 130-an hektar yang berdiri di atas tanah Pakualaman dan tanah Kasultanan. Di mana di atas tanah tersebut banyak para penggarap. Lanjut. Nah ini saya akan coba menjelaskan. Jadi ada, kalau kita golongkan ada 4 jenis tanah di sana. 1 tanah Kasultanan, 2 tanah Kadipaten, tanah desa, dan tanah yang memang sudah dikuasai oleh masyarakat dengan hak tertentu. Nah pemegangnya Kasultanan Land adalah Kasultanan, Kadipaten adalah Kadipaten, kemudian pemerintah desa yang megang adalah pemerintah desa. Kemudian kalau yang individual tentu saja berdasar SHM atau SHGB mereka tercatat untuk itu. Nah kemudian siapa penggunanya? Penggunanya adalah masyarakat yang menggarap lah, istilahnya menggarap dengan surat keterangan dari Kasultanan atau Pakualaman, baik itu berupa kekancingan, ketitir atau anggaduh. Nah ini kalau di bahasa Indonesia kan sulit, apalagi di bahasa Inggris kan. Nah ini memang khas Jogja. Jadi kemudian yang Kadipaten juga begitu. Kemudian tanah desa itu dikuasai oleh pemerintah desa. Nah untuk kompensasinya seperti apa? Nah di tanah Kasultanan dan Kadipaten itu tanah penggantian tanah, uang penggantiannya diserahkan ke Kadipaten Pakualaman ataupun Kasultanan. Sementara bangunan, tanaman, dan kegiatan lain yang ada di atasnya itu diserahkan kepada masyarakat yang telah menempati sesuai dengan data yang diperoleh. Nah data itu adalah tercatat di pemerintah desa. Nah yang menarik juga di Kulon Progo ini ada beberapa tambak. Tambak itu berdiri di atas tanah Kadipaten. Nah tetapi pemilik tambak itu menyewa kepada penduduk yang mendapat surat dari Kadipaten. Nah sehingga di dalam LO-nya kejaksaan itu bahwa itu semacam sewa yang semestinya ilegal, mestinya tidak mendapat penggantian. Termasuk juga tambak di sana tidak sesuai dengan tata ruang. Nah ini menjadi sangat menarik. Nah kemudian juga mungkin dengan pelajaran Bandara Jogja ini ada semacam berita saat ini bahwa Kasultanan Jogja tidak akan membebaskan lahan lagi untuk kepentingan umum. Tapi nanti mungkin dalam bentuk sewa atau bagaimana. Nah ini merupakan tantangan bagi teman-teman ATR BPN di dalam upaya pengadaan lahan di Jogja. Karena ada 2 jalan tol yang terkendala dengan adanya isu ini. Yaitu jalan tol Solo Jogja dan jalan tol Jogja Bawen. Nah ini mungkin menjadi PR kita bersama bagaimana agar pembangunan dapat terpenuhi tetapi kepentingan dari Kesultanan tidak terganggu. Oke lanjut. Ya, kesimpulan ya, oke. Ya, jadi lanjut saja. Nah, pelajaran apa yang dapat kita peroleh? Jadi karena adanya kekhususan di Jogja ini, itu adalah bahwa tanah Kasultanan dan Kadipaten itu sebenarnya tercatat di masing-masing desa. Jadi apabila kita akan melakukan penilaian untuk kepentingan umum terkait dengan masalah tanah Kadipaten dan Kasultanan, itu tentu saja kita akan coba desa untuk melakukan identifikasi ini menjadi sangat penting. Kemudian juga beberapa pihak yang sangat berperan di dalam melakukan tinjauan awal itu menjadi sangat penting, harus kita perhatikan. Kemudian juga dengan adanya peraturan Menteri ATR BPN terkait dengan tanah di Jogja, bahwa nanti tanah yang belum terdaftar itu kemungkinan akan menjadi tanah kesultanan dan tanah kadipaten. Nah itu yang mungkin menjadi pelajaran bagi di Indonesia. Kemudian lanjut slide terakhir. Nah terkait dengan hal ini Peraturan Presiden nomor 62 tahun 2016 seharusnya bahwa di dalam melakukan penilaian terhadap tanah-tanah yang tidak terdaftar itu dilakukan adanya uang kerohiman. Tetapi mengingat proyek di Jogja ini kita lakukan 2016, maka kita mengajunya pada Undang-Undang nomor 2 tahun 2012 tidak ada memberikan adanya uang kerahiman kepada warga yang telah menghuni lebih dari 10 tahun. Nah itu. Oke, mungkin itu yang dapat saya sampaikan. Mungkin kalau ada nanti pertanyaan silahkan. Terima kasih. Saya kembalikan kepada moderator. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you so much, Mr. Muhammad Mutakin, for your presentation. That's a case from Indonesia, lesson learned from Indonesia. And next we will hear about lesson learned from case in Uganda. Mr. Nyonyin Tonosiras will presenting. He is a registered surveyor, the Institution of Surveyors of Uganda. And let me read his short bio first. Mr. Nyonyin Tonosiras is a registered surveyor and professional member of the Institution of Surveyors of Uganda. He has many years of experience in asset valuation for secures, lending, large-scale land acquisition, property and asset valuation, land transaction advisory, property management and property rate assessment for public and private entities. His professional experience includes team leader or senior valuation surveyor for Tilenga project under Total Energies, ENP, Resettlement Action Plan, expert for East African crude oil pipeline, and the supervision and coordination of large-scale valuation for various commercial MDIs and other financial institutions. Please welcome Mr. Nyonyin Tonosiras, 15 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be presenting.
Before we begin with the presentation, I would like to remind you, you may ask question through Slido. You can go to slido.com and enter the code. The code is #LV 2022. Yeah, the code of slido.com is #LV 2022. You may put your question there, and the committee will select from all those questions to be presented in this discussion. Okay, Mr. Nyonyin Tono, have you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sorry, we still try to connect with Mr. Nyonyin Tonosiras.
You can't hear me? Hello?
Okay. Any updates?
Can you hear me?
Okay, wait a moment. We still try to reach Mr. Nyonyin Tonosiras, and after.
Thank you for the.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yes. So I'm going to be presenting about valuation and compensation in East Africa. This is for unregistered land, a case study of Uganda. Next slide, please. Uganda has, like most developing countries, over 70% of the land is unregistered. And this is, as several research has been shown, is a big challenge, especially in the acquisition of land for several government projects. We have eastern and western and northern regions of Uganda having customary land, which is the unregistered land. But with central, which land is majorly registered, it has so many occupants, so many squatters, and which have now created unregistered interests. Next slide, please. So this research study had 3 case studies. One is a road project in eastern Uganda. This is 111 kilometers, and this was being acquired by Uganda National Road Authority. So the second case study is a railway project. This is a standard gauge railway of 273 kilometers. This is from the eastern to the city center of Kampala. Third is a rural electrification project. So this was to start the different sectors, infrastructure projects in Uganda, to understand how the land is acquired, especially for unregistered land. Next, please. There we have the different legal frameworks that we use to acquire land in Uganda, and this includes unregistered and customary land. Customary land in the 1995 was recognized as a land tenure, but before that, customary tenure land was not recognized. It was taken as public land, and that was creating so many loopholes, especially in the acquisition of the land. Next, please. So this is to illustrate the map of Africa, just to show where Uganda is. And on the right, you see the distribution of the unregistered land. You see that a majority of the land is not registered. In the north and east, that is customary land, but that is the communal owned customary land. But when you see in the west, this is yes, still customary land, but this is individually owned land. In the center, is where we have the Milo tenure. This is equivalent to freehold tenure, but this is because of the ethnicity in the central. That's how it has its unique name. But this is where you find so many squatters, so many lawful and bona fide occupants staying on the land, and that's unregistered interests. Next, please. Thus, from this table, you see the gravity of the challenge we have as a country in valuation and compensation, because we have over 75% of the land unregistered, and this combines with customary squatters and the unknown tenure. And the unknown tenure is due to the different legal regimes which have created the gray areas, and these gray areas haven't been fully resolved to date. So that creates a very big challenge in compensation. Next, please. So from that aspect, we see that we have three types of unregistered land. One is customary land, and this is evidenced by sale agreements mainly. But you see that most of the land is not. There's no any form of legal documentation or any form of ownership to verify the interest held. And then we have squatters, and these are common on public land and also on Milo land, Milo tenure. And this is where occupants occupy the land without any permission of either the government or the registered owner. And then third is what we call Chivanja. Now, Chivanja, this is on Buganda land, and this is where occupants are on the land with the consent of the Milo land owner. And this is specific to the Milo tenure, which is the central region. Next, please. So now to take you through the evaluation process, which could be quite similar in other regions. But first is to identify what rights exist and who hold these rights. So in this case, we establish the nature, the extent, the legitimacy of those rights. And these rights can either be held individually, like we see in Western Uganda, or communally in the northern or eastern part of Uganda. Followed, once we identify the rights, the next is to collect information on these rights. And this information is on either the unit of measure, unit of land, because for the different regions, the unit of measure differs, and that has to be established on a case by case basis, depending on the region that's being affected or the community that's being affected. But at the end of the day, once this unit is obtained, we convert it to a commonly known unit, and which is per acre, and that's how we're able to determine the rate to apply for these affected interests. Next, please. So from once we determine the unit of measure, we determine the interest. Next is to determine the market. Is there a market for undisturbed land? And where there's market, then we collect the information above for that market. However, where there is not, and this is very common in Milo land, and this is Chivanja, we make assumptions on how a rational buyer would determine or would assess the market. And so now this, we look at so many other aspects on the vulnerability of the rights holders, on the disadvantages of the land as is. But then fourth is to estimate the equitable value. So now here in Uganda, our current legal framework states market value, but market value has its challenges. The fact that it is not, this is assumed without compulsion, assumes without a willing buyer and a willing seller, which is not the case in compulsory acquisition. And we are now using IVS, and which recommends equitable value, and equitable value. We have identified parties. We are trying to establish the price for the transfer of that asset between the government and the affected persons. And then finally is to identify any non-market values. And now this can either be social, can be cultural, can be religious, or environmental. And now this is a new norm that we are trying to attach to all the assessments that we are currently doing. Because once we leave out the non-market value, then it is not able to assess an adequate and fair value. Next, please. Then from the process of evaluation, it's not a process of compensation. One and the key among which is to start with consultation and sensitization of the affected community. So this, we engage straight from the national government to the local government to the affected communities. So telling them about the project, what is the objective, what is the benefit, what is the duration, who's affected, and who do we intend to engage. After that, then we demarcate the corridor that's going to be affected. Through demarcation, we're able to identify the rights holders. After identification, next is to carry out due diligence and verify who the actual rights holders are. And once this is the rights holders have been identified, next is to assess the land. And this, again, we use the IVS standards. Finally, is to award the compensation value. Next, please. So, but the gist of this process is the consultative process. It is the stakeholder engagement, because once we have identified the corridor. We need to identify the rights holders, and then we need also to verify those. An objective of this is to enable the rights holders to participate in this process. And once they participate, they understand the projects, they understand the benefits of the project. And once they understand the benefit of the project, we have buy-in into the project. We build that trust with the project. And once that trust is obtained, it's very easy to disseminate this information and all other project activities to these affected communities. And once that is done, we are able to verify these affected individuals, and here is the rights holders. This process involves several activities, one among which is to identify the stakeholders, analyze the stakeholders, establish who are the key, who are the important to target first, and how to approach them, disclose this information, and to always to report back to these stakeholders. It's not only a one-time come in and go out, but to always keep on sharing the progress. But key among which is to manage grievances, because once grievances are not managed very well, it will drag on the project, it will delay implementation, and which will even have the costs go up. Next, please. So that is an illustration of the process. So we have what the stakeholder engagements, which is pre-valuation, we have during the evaluation process, and then we have the post-valuation process. You notice that majority of the activities are during the valuation process. But the challenge is that there are few engagements post-valuation, and that's something that we need to look at as a nation, to have more engagements post-valuation to establish and find out. It is more of the monitoring and evaluation, but more to assess how the livelihoods have been affected by the project. Next, please. But now, what is the rationale for stakeholder engagement? Why is stakeholder engagement so critical for customary land? It is because the land is not registered, and that is from even the title unregistered land. It's not registered, so there's no information in the land information system at the national registry. So there's nothing to verify and identify who the rights holders are. But then there's also no ownership documentation. This land has been passed down generations. It has been inherited, has been gifted, has been probably transacted, but without any documentation. So there is no documentation to start with. So and that's why we need the stakeholder engagement. And then also from that is to verify the rights holders. But then the other thing is that there usually land disputes pre-project, also some which come out because the project is there, and especially where there's a competition element, where there's a money element, usually disputes arise. However, stakeholder engagement is able to resolve this and be able to allow the project to proceed. Next, please. So those are the key stakeholders. Again, as I said, for the national government, this is where we have the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. This is the line ministry for the land acquisition. Then we have the chief government valuer. So now this is the government official who approves all land acquisition values or valuation reports in the country. So and the chief government valuer sits at the ministry offices, and he or she is really a key stakeholder in this process. And then we have the land commission. This holds all government land. And then from there we have the local government authorities. This is from the district to the city, town council, sub-county, up to the village, up to the last level of authority. Third is the project affected persons, who we call PAPs. So now these can either be individual or community. These are either directly or indirectly affected. These are identified and these have to be engaged. And then another group is the vulnerable groups. These are given special interest given their level of vulnerability. And now this is dependent on their gender, on their age, on their physical disability or economic disadvantage. So now these are engaged specifically and to understand how the project is going to affect them and try and prepare them to the effects of these projects. Next, please. So having understood the different stakeholders, there's a different communication to these stakeholders, because the ones who are more illiterate and these are the government agencies, both local and the central, is through letters, through letters inviting them to these engagements. Then we have newspaper advertisements. We have a local radio advertisement, and this is for the communities and the local government authorities. Then we have the door-to-door reminders, and this is done by the local council executive committee, where all the inhabitants or the residents of that village are informed and reminded, even a few day or a day to the community engagements, to come and attend and be sensitized and be informed about the project. And of course, throughout the process, there are reminders and other engagements if they're invited to. Next, please. Then, but these are the verification team. Of course, we have the technical team with the land surveyor, the valuers, the legal experts. But then we also have the other. This is the government agencies, which are from the districts all the way up to the lower levels.
Mr.
Next,
Siras,
please.
I'm sorry, I have to remind you about time. Yeah, would you like
Okay,
to go to the conclusion?
let me conclude.
Thank you.
Yes. So if from just this slide is that one is the community compensation is one of the approaches that's being used in Uganda. This is where compensation is not paid to the individuals, but it is paid to the communities. And now, but that has its challenges. And if you can go to the next slide, is the challenges of this is that there's concentration to the communities, and the individuals are not, livelihoods are not improved, because with the concentration on paying the compensation to the community leads, to the clan heads, the individual people who are affected are not catered for, and that has its challenges, because one is that the livelihoods are not improved. Second is that the women and children are not involved, because the planning is left to the men. And then also there's little concentration on engaging the individuals, meaning that the individuals don't know, appreciate the evaluation, how it's done, they don't appreciate the legal framework, they don't appreciate all the processes done. And now those are the challenges of the community position. Thank you. Again.
Thank you. Let's give a big applause to Mr. Nyonyin Tono Siras. Thank you from presentation from Uganda. And next we will have presentation lesson learned from case from Nepal. I would like to invite Mr. Aaron Dennis, Social Development or Safeguard Specialist, Asian Development Bank. Mr. Aaron Dennis is a Social Development Specialist with ADB's South Asia Energy Division. Aaron has worked on land acquisition and resettlement issues in Indonesia, Nepal, India, and Bangladesh. He is interested in helping clients to more quickly, transparently, and reproductively inventory resettlement impacts, and to demonstrate the project are fulfilling their commitments to avoid impacts to livelihoods and to recognize and respect indigenous people's rights and customary land claims. Aaron is also interested in the intersection between involuntary resettlement and indigenous people safeguard, and the role of participatory process in project planning and implementation, particularly process for achieving free, prior, and informed consent. And with Aaron will be also presenting to us Mr. Laxmi Prasad Subaidi as a social development or safeguard specialist Asian Development Bank. Laxmi Prasad Subaidi is an anthropologist with 20 years of experience in social planning, program design, impact assessment, and resettlement planning, and compliance review. Laxmi has been working as a safeguard specialist in Asian Development Bank Nepal Resident Mission since 2010. Before joining ADB, he worked for the World Bank as social safeguard consultant. Laxmi also has teaching experience as he was with Tribhuvan University for 10 years. Working as lecturer, Mr. Subedi has published number of articles in journals on development, natural resources management, and poverty issues, and presented papers in a number of international seminars. Laxmi has practical experience of infrastructure project, impact assessment, and land valuation process to design mitigation measures. Yeah, please welcome Mr. Aaron and Mr. Laxmi Prasad Subaidi. 15 minutes for your time. Yes, you may begin your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So let me share my power presentation. So is this on the screen now?
Looks good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is a joint presentation with my colleague Aaron and me. We are presenting valuation and compensation of unregistered land or customary lands and cases from Nepal. So here, like the previous presenters and the learnings from the presentation from the Indonesia and the Uganda, let us also set some contextual challenges that we are facing in recognizing as well as compensating the customary lands or the unregistered lands. And there are the land tenure system and registration system like in other countries. In Nepal also there is a land tenure system which is relatively new, or it is also try to regulate by legal or the institutional reforms, and still it is evolving on the recognition pattern. So there are varied legal practices for registration of the land ownership. In Nepal, there are two ways of recognizing the lands. That is the formal land titling, which is governed by the government land administration system through the cadastral map preparation. So there are two sets of cadastral maps prepared in Nepal. One is based on the current system, that is trigonometric system, which captures all the lands in a cadastral map and give the ownership status based on the customary, government, or the individual ownership. Another is on the free sheet, which captures the records of only land used by the community or individuals or agency, and most of the area which is not being used or cultivated by this community are not recognized or recorded in the legal system or government system, which might have been complemented or supplemented by the informal land claims, which the community recognized, which could be registered, or in some cases it could be unregistered. So if we see the types of untitled lands claim, there we can largely divide them into two categories. Some lands, those they are non-title, unregistered, or customary claim, could be divided into the having some legalizable rights or the unrecognizable rights. So it also form into the public land claimed by some individual owners, which could be a legalizable, individual or institutional use and claim missed out from formal process, which also could be a legalizable right and recognized from the government or the formal government system. Then the tenant's land, which would be a private or the government with the registered tenants, that could be a good basis for the compensation or the legal rights. And it sometimes it could be title, sometimes it could not be a title. And another is lands being squatted or encroached beyond the or outside the individual land ownership. So this type of practices are in Nepal. So let us discuss on the how the non-title lands are being compensated in the development projects. So based on the current practices, there is no specific method for valuation on the non-title lands being used in Nepal. There is a very clear difference between the title land and the non-title lands in Nepal. The compensation has been given with the relative value to the line title lands. So if title lands and the compensation vary from 10 to 95% of the title land. So for to evaluate that, there is some indicators has been developed by the government on an ad hoc basis, not on a systemic basis, to use for the percentage determination. In some cases, there is a land-based income or productivity used for calculation of the non-title land compensation. So let us given the how these indicators are being used. So to evaluate the title land, generally the government or there is no formal valuation system in Nepal, like in the Indonesia or the Uganda, just we have say got the reference from there. But the valuation is being done by observing or evaluating the attributes of the land, just like the physical setting, access, the transportation and other things, the productivity of the land and the land use. And these attributes gives the overall characteristics of the land plus to be evaluated for the title land. Then it compares with the government does have the annual published rate for the land registration. It is for the only the minimum registration purpose. Sometimes it links with the open market sale with the real price. So there may not be a very mature market system, land market, established market system, but there is a system which is governing the overall land price and valuation. Third is property sale with asked price and the bank and financial institution. So based on that, the primary value for title land is being identified or the valuation is being done by using the different means for the acquisition of the land. It is being through the Land Acquisition Act. Then the unregistered or the customary land, then evaluate it or the percentage based on the documentary evidences with the users or the claimers. Based on that, so based on the document evaluation of the documentary evidences, the committee or the recommender apply some depreciating percent factor. So that's why the title, there is a very clear difference between the title and non-title or the unregistered land value. So based on the applying this depreciating factor, the final value of the land comes out. So let us present here on some case studies how the land being valuated. So you can see, so this
Lucky,
is
your slides are a little bit behind. Can we make sure to advance them?
Okay, so it is now coming?
Yes, there we go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So here the energy project. So it's an energy project. You can see this flat area where a substation is being constructed or to be planned. So this area is occupied or being used by 16 households. So they were registered tenant. Then they have to right to receive, as per the law, if they are the registered tenant, they do have the right to receive the 50% of land value. But this land is also not registered in individuals or some other people. So there is a problem. But the people who are using land, their name is in the field book, which keeps the records of the overall land use from the government side. So based on that, then there is a recommendation from the local government about their user right and how they are using. So based on that, so the cabinet decided to pay 50%, that is based on the tenancy, and additional 45% of the title land valuation to the compensation. This means if the title land value is 100, and then the non-title land is getting 95% of that value. Let us see another example of the road project. So this project linked the Kathmandu Valley, the capital city of Nepal.
Lakshmanji, we still got to move the slides a bit more. I apologize for this. We're still behind.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
I'm not seeing the case study yet. Can we go one more?
Is this?
We have to go back. I apologize for the interruption. I'm just trying to make sure that we got you on the slide you'd like to share.
So is this coming now? The energy
We're on
project?
valuation determination now.
Oh.
I think we might have an old version of this PowerPoint up. Let me see if I can take over. You keep going, and I'll see if I can take the control.
Okay. So how to do that one? Do you take this control?
Try now.
Is this appear?
I think the host has disabled our participant screen sharing. So this is the right one. Just keep on it.
Okay, right, road project, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry for this one because of the technological thing and others. So this is the Kathmandu Tarai fast track project. So here people are using land for generations. No claims from the others means either the government or others, but that they are continuously using this land, but they do not have the title. Both government and community recognize the land belongs to them. So then again, so because there is not much systemic approach to pay compensation for the non-title lands or unregistered, then here the cabinet made a policy decision to pay compensation of the title, 75% of the title land if somebody losing the entire land. And if they are losing the partial land or the partial piece of the land, then they are entitled to pay 66%. So this means there is factors the government is using to pay compensation to determine the compensations here. Why? Means that the Land Acquisition Act, which is the main instrument to acquire the land, do not recognize the ownership or the title things, entitlements for the non-title lands. That's why all the decision being made based on the ad hoc or the case-to-case basis. So here sometimes it goes to 10%, sometimes 20%, sometimes 90%, sometimes 75%. So now am I in the next slide? Yeah. I'm moving to the another slide. Is this appear now?
We're a little bit behind on the PowerPoint. I think that they've got the different versions. So
okay,
you're sort of on your own.
Okay. So another practice in Nepal is using the crop production. So this the government calculate the land where the people are using. They do the calculation of the annual total agricultural product of that land. So just like if there's a here, I am presenting here seed that is being used to calculate, just like the paddy, maize, and potato, 3 crops in that land. Then there is a system within the agriculture knowledge center or government office. They do have the productivity, annual productivity, then multiply the productivity by market rate of that product. So then it comes to a total land value. So this practice is being done, and it also the annual products is being multiplied by number of years to make it the sometimes replacement or to make it the comparable price of the title land. So this is another practice being used in Nepal. So here, so they do use some indicators or the documentous evidences to determine the percent thresholds. For that, we also doesn't know in detail how these percent thresholds are being determined, and we are planning to have some study on this to do this one. But here, if you see the practices of the valuation, these comparison of the title land, somewhere they are using the comparative analysis method, somewhere they are using the income method, and somewhere they are using the income capitalization methods, but without referring the international valuation standards. So one part is that, and another is because of the problem in the identification of the total land and the cadastral system, also the valuation of the system, because the characteristics and the attribute of the land is the major indicator to identify the price. So that's why we try to have some solution using the information technology. So based on that, we have devised a system in ADB, current or future ADB projects in Nepal, utilizing a software platform which aim to standardize information collection about the land claims. So that we are planning to do. So this system is loss assessment, compensation, acquisition, compensation, and management information system. By name, short names, it's a Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the name of the goddess which deal with the property. So this system captures all the cadastral records, including the cadastral data and individuals and the community ownership, and that also has the provisions of the detailed assessment and the attribute assessment of this, and we divide it into the scoring system of that plot and make it with the comparable rate of the title land and transport it for the valuation of the non-title based on the percentage or whatever. But this system is now working on it. And another is we are also using the geospatial data supporting valuation. For that, I would like to hand over to Aaron. Please, Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you, Lakshmiji. I think we are out of time, so we'll keep this quick. The concluding bits of this that we were just trying to emphasize is, as some of the earlier speakers were saying, we would like to be able to assign the values that are being used for title land also to non-title land. But of course, there's a lot of challenges with how one goes about getting these in. I've got the sign up again for time being up, so we'll just kind of scroll through some pictures and say thank you very much for the opportunity. Maybe we can adjust more of this in Q&A. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Aaron Dennis and Lakshmi Prasad Subaidi for your presentation. Yeah. Next, after we learn from Nepal, we would like to learn another case from Sri Lanka. We have Mr. Razak M. Ghani as a Senior Social Development Specialist, World Bank. Mr. Razak is a Senior Social Development Specialist of the World Bank and supported social safeguards of the World Bank project in Sri Lanka until 2016, including some high-risk projects such as Metro Colombo Urban Development Project and the Strategic Cities Development Project. Prior to joining the World Bank, he was a professor of sociology at University of Paradeniya, Sri Lanka, and provided consultancy to Asian Development Bank, International Fund for Agriculture Development, and other international development agencies. He is a PhD in applied sociology from La Trobe University, Melbourne, Australia. Please welcome Mr. Razak M. Ghani. You have 15 minutes, Mr. Ghani. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It is very prestigious to coming in presenting Sri Lanka case. I'm happy to explain what Sri Lanka case study can share in this important international conference. The story of Sri Lanka is how incremental improvements being made in land acquisition regulation and practice in Sri Lanka. So I am going to present a kind of a background. Next slide, please. Next slide, sorry. Next slide. Sorry. Okay. So Sri Lanka case is kind of, a kind of progressive change has been made over the past several years. There are the laws and regulatory frameworks which developed over the past wanted to ensure that, tenure security for the individuals residing and using the land, and also, more importantly, prevent forced displacement and eviction. The legal and policy frameworks which gradually improve the recognition of the rights of owning land and possession of land, although there are some shortcomings remain, which I explain later. It is important to note that it reflects a change of a movement, or the changes in the all reforms taken place towards good governance with increased transparency, predictability, and consultation with the affected persons as well as appeal option. So it is a kind of a progressive changes made over the couple of years. The story of Sri Lanka was about how unregistered land occupiers have been brought into the equal as land title holders as well. So I go for the next as a background. Next slide, please. Sorry, previous one, sorry. Yeah, this one is the foundation for the land acquisition regulation in Sri Lanka, which is called Land Acquisition Act in 1950s. It authorizes acquisition of private lands for the public purposes without offering full rehabilitation or livelihood restoration. The compensations are paid cash for loss of land, structures for crops, only for the project person with have the documentary evidence of ownership. It does not provide any physical relocation or household resettlement assistance. It's only provide giving piece of land in lieu of the land acquired, alternative land if available. In other words, the land is given when there are land available for the compensate for the land. Next slide, please. So this is the important reform made in Sri Lanka, which is we call National Involuntary Resettlement Policy, which is simply called as NIRP. This is brought in 2001. Basically, this was approved by the cabinet to decide and introduce changes in the management of land acquisition resettlement in the country, which is applicable to development-induced involuntary resettlement only, not conflict-induced, but resettlement which are induced by development projects. So this particular NIRP intend to address the gaps between the country's Land Acquisition Act as well as bringing the international standard in resettlement process. This is a policy statement on land acquisition, compensation at full replacement cost, including the transaction cost, livelihood restoration, and physical relocation. It's also defined the institutional responsibilities in implementing the resettlement and management of land acquisition. But it did not provide detailed process how it should activate the policy statement, achieve the policy statement. The main agency which is responsible for the NIRP is Ministry of Land Development, which is expected to draft amendments in time to time for the Land Acquisition Act, prepare regulation and guideline in line with the NIRP. I'll come back to some number of regulations made based on the NIRP. However, it is to mention that no legal amendments to Land Acquisition Act so far made. Its 1950 Land Acquisition Act still remains as the foundation, but it informed the gradual development of a series of implementation regulation of the Land Acquisition Act. Next slide, please. So this is some which I want to emphasize how the Land Acquisition Act versus NIRP different in treating the unregistered landowners and unregistered lands, as well as the bringing the level of resettlement assistance into international standards. There are a number of dimensions where we can consider. The payment of compensation in the Land Acquisition Act does not consider is important. It's under urgency provision, the land was taken. But NIRP, it very clearly says guarantee the affected people or the persons prior to displacement, their compensation to be made. And also scope of affected person is narrowly defined in the Land Acquisition Act. But in the NIRP, which is the policy statement 2001, bring the number of different individuals or affected person into the compensation process. So it's include the encroachers, quarters, and the land tenants, leases, wage workers of the commercial establishment as well. It's a very wider and improved, the category of scope of affected person. And calculation of compensation as well. The Land Acquisition Act does not provide any clear definition. It also only the affected persons paid a depreciated value of the affected properties. But in the NIRP, it is a wide range of scope of losses covered. The people are eligible to get all different type of compensation, including the compensation for replacement cost without depreciation, as well as a transaction cost as well. In the replacement cost, again, it is a full replacement cost provided in the NIRP, but in the Land Acquisition Act, it's only partial guaranteed. Next slide, please. I don't want to elaborate more because in the slide is self-explanatory. And what here is important to note, the resettlement policies or the practices were very much, they highlighted in the NIRP. Any development induced resettlement program or under the development projects, it has to implement the resettlement implementation of the action plan, where the more than 20 households are involved. There is a comprehensive resettlement action plan to be prepared. If the people or the households less than 20, then the abbreviated or smaller level scale resettlement action plan to be prepared. So it is a very important step because, the Land Acquisition Act does not give any, the process of, identifying or making the resettlement as a process or mitigation action. Person with no document interest of land, which is the important part of this whole conference and discussion. The Land Acquisition Act did not provide any, compensation or recognize the unregistered land. But in the NIRP, it's very clear, persons without documentary evidence of their interest in the acquired land may still entitle compensation. Example, the illegal or occupiers, the squatters of land. And also, if the local government confirms their presence in the land, they are eligible to get the compensation. The income restoration is very clearly in the NIRP. All people, disregard of their title or non-title, they are eligible to get the compensation, including the whole rehabilitation and resettlement assistance, and improve their quality of life to better or previous condition. The important other dimension in this whole process under NIRP, the NIRP provides, it's a very comprehensive opportunity to participate the stakeholders or the affected persons in the discussion of the whole process of implementation of land acquisition process. Next slide, please. So just two case studies I want to present. One is the Southern Transport Development Project, which is funded by the Asian Development Bank. The project aimed at, developing a highway or the linking to main city of Colombo and two southern cities of Galle and Mathura. And also this project aimed at, reduce the accidents through the road safety improvement. The important part here to mention, their social impact is huge. More than 5,000 households, it covers nearly more than 20,000 people were affected. Among this group, 20% of the affected households they wanted to be relocated or physically relocate. And out of this total, again, 17,000 people were encroachers or non-title owners, in our language is unregistered land users. So this is important parts, how the STDP or the Southern Transport Development Project brought this program applying in NIRP. Next slide, please. So the resettlement action plan clearly, they're taken into consideration of the NIRP provision. They have provided, the all required opportunity for the affected parties, regardless of their land ownership, and livelihood restorations, alternative land for the people, either they are formal or informal business owners. This whole different progressive steps being made in the resettlement implementation plan under the Southern Transport Development Project. The eligibility of the affected persons, I should say, it's went beyond the Land Acquisition Act and applying the involuntary resettlement policy of Sri Lanka. So there's a notable innovation in the Southern Transport Development Board project was, it is important to mention here, all informal people who have no land provided with the 10 to 20 purchase of land, and also they provided all the resettlement support for improve their life after the resettlement. Next slide, please. Again, this is something important one to note here. Because of the time constraint, I don't want to elaborate more. You have to note there is important institutional mechanism brought into this program, which is called Land Acquisition and Resettlement Committee, which is called LARC. LARC is the institutional body, which is the local government agencies, together with the head of the government of all important parties of this resettlement and land acquisition process, brought into a kind of institution. They are allowed to decide the compensation package for the all affected persons, including the informal users and unregistered land. So I'll go for next slide. So these are some of the pictures where the houses were provided for the people who completely resettled in these some of the pictures. Next slide, please. So the two important regulations brought based on the NIRP, one is the 2008 Land Regulation Act, which recognized that, the people have rights to, the claim relocation assistance. They were provided, the opportunity to participate in the LARC or the Land Acquisition Resettlement Committee. And 2008 also gave the national policy for getting into the one consolidated framework of the compensation and valuation. Yeah, next slide, please. The Land Acquisition Regulation 2013 is further go beyond the provisions using the NIRP, National Resettlement Implementation Policy. It's also take into consideration that the affected persons can determine their entitlements and negotiate compensation with the team of the LARC or Super LARC team. So additional compensation package include number of things: loss of land, replacement cost, loss of houses, structures, and tenants for dwellers or encroachers, an incentive allowance for vacation of houses, shifting cost for affected families, support for vulnerable groups like female head household or small farmers, person with disabilities. Affected person code also appealed to Super LARC, which is another layer, which is the top level government agencies at the district level. They are heading this institution. They can go, if they don't happy or satisfied with the decision made by the LARC, Land Acquisition Resettlement Committee, they can appeal it to Super LARC, which is the high level officials. They can listen to their grievances and provide the reasonable compensation. This is an important step in the land acquisition process in Sri Lanka. Next slide, please. I'll go quickly. This is the second project, which is funded by the World Bank, the Strategic Cities Development Project, which is considered as one of the best projects so far in Sri Lanka, supported by the World Bank. Resettlement Action Plan is a much more improved version of the Resettlement Implementation Plan of the ADB. It covered the large number of, the compensations, the affected persons and their losses, and provide the lot of opportunities and people to participate in the process, as well as the considered as one of the best way of resettling or managing resettlement impact in Sri Lanka. Next slide, please. And important note here, internal matrix. There is provisions provided in the internal matrix to establish the project-specific entitlement assessment committee. This committee is chaired by the valuation department and the treasury, as well as the Minister of Finance. All the important people come together, and the specific issues encountered by the project being resolved, particularly regarding the compensation valuation process as well as rehabilitation assistance. Next slide, please. So this is some of the pictures. You can see the group of the LARC team there and some of the interventions made by the Strategic Cities Development Project and houses provided for those people affected by it. Next slide. And conclusion, I should mention the important note here. The National Involuntary Resettlement Policy is a key shift in the land acquisition process in Sri Lanka, which is state-centric approach to people-focused approach. It's also bring the National Compensation Policy together through the Regulation 2008 and 2013, reflected the application of NIRP principles. Affected person without document title, land should receive fair and just treatment. It is an important note that all people, regardless of their land ownership, they are able to get the fair and just the compensation. Vulnerable groups included there as well. And there are some gaps remaining here. I'm not saying that this is a full and the meeting the international standard fully, but it is denoted that this legal provisions provided by the NIRP only applied a number of projects, which is 18 in number. They are kind of the projects which are high impact, high risk, high impact projects like which I mentioned, the Metro Colombo project or the Strategic Cities project, where the financial institution, international financial institution, the government can agree this as important project, then the specified project regulations apply. So 18 projects already there. So the story of Sri Lanka is 3. Important is